Hello, welcome to Sacred Disruptions, where the sacred and the everyday collide, where we challenge the conversations, the thinking, the beliefs we've inherited, and reimagine what faith could look like: engaging, free, deeply alive, and fully lived. My name is Alan Wicks, and I'm your host. This is not just another religious conversation about rules and proving who's right and who's wrong. It's meant to be an awakening, an invitation to rewrite the narrative. If you've ever felt there's something more going on here, you're exactly where you need to be. You belong here. And in this episode today, I was thinking about the state of our nation. In the United States of America, we've just gone through an election. The new administration has just taken office. They are making widespread changes and signing a lot of executive orders and a lot of documents and putting people in place and positions. And like any society or situation where we have opposing views and opposing groups, people are upset, people are angry, people are hurting. There's a lot of people being displaced. There's a lot of programs that are being eliminated. People are fearful on both sides. There's something to be said about the thought process that when I win, they lose. Or said more accurately, when they lose, I win. There's something about that thought process that doesn't seem to be truly empowering. Think about it. If the thought process is if they lose and then I win, I'm not even sure what that looks like for me to win. So, in the background of what's happening right now in our society, in our communities, we have this sort of dysfunction. We have this sort of unfulfilled hope. We have this sort of anxiety. And it seems like it's feeding the conversation that now I'm going to hunker down into my group, into my space where I feel comfortable, and I'm going to turn around and hate you. I'm going to disassociate from that group. And anybody that looks like or acts like or I can assume is a part of that group, they're bad, they're wrong. Their opinions are wrong. If you take a look at social media today, friends, unfriending friends, people going back and forth in arguments. There's this thought that there's some winners and there's some losers. And in order to be a winner, there has to be a loser. And if they're a loser, I'm a winner. And these voices are loud, and there are a lot of them. Some are hateful and boastful, some are fearful, some are threatening. And again, this notion that when they lose, I win. I'm not sure that's empowering. Here's the question that I have: what would be a sacred response to all of this? What is the special and unique response that has purpose and value, that could change something, that could make a difference, that could alter my experience of life, my experience of my community, my experience of the world, and maybe theirs? And as I was thinking about that, I went back to my faith tradition. And I remembered a story. And the story goes something like this: that there was a radical Jewish rabbi who had a message of hope. He had a message of love. He had a message of coming together. He had a message of serving other people. And the establishment did not like the fact that this new radical rabbi was gaining momentum, that people were actually starting to follow him. And because of the opposition and what was about to happen, the Jewish rabbi said, you know what? I'm out of here. Matter of fact, he's going to go back home. And so while he was on his way, he got tired and sat down at a well. As he was sitting there resting, a woman who was of a different ethnic group, actually a Samaritan woman, was walking toward the well. And we assume she was walking toward the well to get water for herself, maybe for her family. And as she was approaching, the Jewish rabbi says to her, "Can you get me some water?" We know later in the story that he asked that because he didn't have any way to get water out of this well. She came prepared. She had a bucket, she had a rope. She was ready to get water. In response to what he says, we hear the ethnic tension. We can see the racial divide. We can see the tension between the groups that they represent. This is what she says to him: "You are a Jew, I'm a Samaritan. We don't normally talk to each other. We don't normally have anything to do with each other. We don't believe the same things. We don't do the same things. We don't have the same culture. We don't have the same experiences in this country. So I'm surprised that you are going to ask me for something to drink." Now, that's so interesting because I can see myself if somebody who wasn't a part of my group, actually a group that I thought didn't like me or that disregards my experience, makes me feel small, at least their conversation makes me feel small. If someone of that group approached me, I would probably be a little bit like the woman. Can you see yourself here? And it's not just a national thing. Maybe it's not just a racial thing. Maybe it's in your family. Maybe it's in between the departments in your company. Maybe it's between the committees in your religious group that you don't like us, so don't ask me for a favor. Don't ask me to help you. In response, the Jewish rabbi says to her, "You may miss the gift of God that's available to you. If you knew who I was, you would ask me for a drink." And at the end of their conversation, because she actually engaged. See, I give her credit. She engaged in the conversation after she put aside her bias, after she put aside what she thought she knew about that Jewish rabbi. She walked away from that conversation being known. She walked away being empowered and purposeful. And most of all, she walked away being free. So, thinking about this story, it reminded me of a moment in my life. I'm in a class for human performance and I don't like the instructor. And let me tell you why. Because that instructor for me was privileged, he was arrogant, he was part of a different ethnic group, a different financial class. There's no way he would know what it would take for me to perform. There's no way that he would get all the struggle that I had to go through. And so it's probably not a surprise to you that I didn't get almost anything out of the class until a moment that changed everything. And in this moment, I'm standing in front of the class and we're engaging in a conversation. And I'm not sure what the question was or really what we were talking about. I only really remember this one moment when I said to him, "I know me." I was emphatic. I was dogmatic. I was stubborn. "I know me." And he challenged me and said, "Consider, you only know a view of you." Man, I did not like that. Again, who are you? You're not part of my group. You don't know what I know. You haven't experienced what I experienced. How can you tell me what I don't know? And he very calmly invited me into the conversation as he said it again. Consider, you only have a view of you, and that's not all of who you are. And that was the moment I saw it. So let me give you some background because in that time in my life, I was upset, I was hurt, I was discouraged. I had some huge failures in my life, and who I saw myself as was a failure. that I couldn't get anything right. No matter how hard I tried, it wasn't going to work out. And that's who I was for me. In that moment, I got to take a step back and see, wait a minute, that's just a view of me, which gave me access to say, well, what other view is there? And then I began to think about all the success that I've had in life, all the accomplishments, all the people in my life, my family and my friends, people that cared about me, relied on me, people that saw me as a winner, as a success. And I began to see myself through their view. And that was a sacred disruption, a special moment in time that had purpose and value, that had me see something new about me. Disrupted those disempowering thoughts of that I'm a failure, that I'm actually worth not much. So wow, that moment in time changed everything. It literally transformed how I saw myself. So even today, when I'm down and I'm upset and I'm frustrated with my choices or things I don't get done or the things I don't do, and I begin to see myself as something less than sacred, I can hear his voice in my head. Well, maybe that's just the view. That conversation gave me something more than just a lesson about human performance. It gave me access to transforming my life. See, I was just like that woman. I walked away from that conversation free and empowered. I walked away from that conversation known. I was able to put aside my bias. I was able to put aside what I thought. I was able to put aside the negative thoughts about the group that I thought he was a part of. I was able to do all of that because I engaged in the conversation. Now, is that the sacred response that we can have? To engage in the conversation. When I'm asked the question, I respond in a way looking for the possibility, looking for the gift of God, for the divine and sacred moment. So at this point, the question is, what will we have to put aside? What will you and I have to set to the side in all of those moments in life where I don't like what's going on? Our groups may be in battle, and yet I'm going to engage in the conversation with you. I'm going to put my bias to the side. I'm going to put what I think I know to the side. I'm going to put my opinion to the side. I might pick it up again, but for this moment, I'm going to engage in the conversation. And at the end of that conversation, I'm looking for the sacred to disrupt what's disempowering me. So take a look. Do the intellectual thought, create a spiritual practice, and see what comes up for you. Now, this conversation doesn't end here because the sacred is never finished disrupting us. Faith isn't about finding the perfect answer. It's about leaning into the questions, embracing the mystery, and discovering what's possible when we step outside of thinking that disempowers. The sacred is already at work in your life. The question is, will you let it disrupt you in the best way possible? Will you engage in the conversation? Will you not discredit someone based on a stereotype, based on a bias, and really engage, looking for what's possible for you? I want to hear from you. Where is the sacred calling you to disrupt what no longer serves you? Connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, X, Threads at Alan D. Wicks to share your thoughts. And if this episode sparks something in you, pass it on to someone else. These conversations are meant to be spread. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. So until then, keep asking, keep seeking, and keep living the sacred disruption. See you next time.